The white man pays Reverend Martin Luther King, subsidizes Reverend Martin Luther King, so that Reverend Martin Luther King can continue to teach the Negroes to be defenseless. That's what you mean by nonviolent. Be defenseless. Be defenseless in the face of one of the most cruel beasts that has ever taken the people into captivity. That's this American white man. And they have proved it throughout the country by the police dogs and the police clubs. 100 years ago, they used to put on a white sheet and use a bloodhound against Negroes. Today, they have taken off the white sheet and put on police uniforms. They've traded in the bloodhounds for police dogs, and they're still doing the same thing. And just as Uncle Tom, back during slavery, used to keep the Negroes from resisting the bloodhound or resisting the Ku Klux Klan by teaching them to love their enemy or pray for those who use them despitefully. Today, Martin Luther King is just a 20th century or modern Uncle Tom or a religious Uncle Tom who is doing the same thing today to keep Negroes defenseless in the face of attack that Uncle Tom did on the plantation to keep those Negroes defenseless in the face of the attack of the Klan in that
Well,
day.
I don't think of love as, in this context, as emotional bosh. I don't think of it as a weak force. But I think of love as something strong and that organizes itself into powerful direct action. This is what I tried to teach in the struggle in the South, that we are not engaged in a struggle that means we sit down and do nothing. That there's a great deal of difference between non-resistance to evil and non-violent resistance. Non-resistance leaves you in a state of stagnant passivity and deadened complacency, wherein non-violent resistance means that you do resist in a very strong and determined manner. And I think some of the criticisms of nonviolence, or some of the critics, fail to realize that we are talking about something very strong, and they confuse non-resistance with nonviolence.
The goal of
That's Malcolm and Martin back in the 60s. You see, we always had our leaders conflicting each other, you know, pick up the gun or, you know, peaceful demonstration. As we have our, you know, our gallant leaders of today.
Yeah.
We're telling us some of us don't like to march. And then we have youth here today, Julian Hemmings.
Yeah.
He just spent a year in Morehouse.
Thank you,
and
thank you guys.
He's come home ready to preach.
Ready to preach
right.
and learn, yeah. Learn more than preach, though.
Right?
Yeah.
Welcome home, man.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back. Since I've been back home, I've worked back with Mr. Gilchrist and Reverend Sharpton, and you know, I learned a lot at Morehouse College. I learned about, you know, becoming myself, and learned that lesson not through just experiences, but through reading. So just getting into Maya Angelou and Toni Morrison and James Baldwin and W. Du Bois, developing my own political philosophy rather than just parroting something, you know. So taking the best and strengths out of all the figures who came before me to develop my own thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do you find that contrast that I just showed you between Martin and Malcolm?
You know, there's always that argument that they were two sides of the same coin.
Right.
Right? So I think the characterization of Malcolm being a violent man and Malcolm being a man of pure peace is absolutely wrong, because you're not taking into account the little differences in their own tactics. Because when you're saying nonviolence is a passive thing, it's not true. Nonviolence is actually very active in disrupting white economics.
That's Reverend Sharpton, nonviolent.
Exactly. And Malcolm X was not a violent guy. In fact, he's never committed active violence himself. So I think when we take those things out of the factor, we realize that these men had more in common than they did different. Yeah.
Brother Leroy, welcome home.
Well, thank you, thank you, and to be in the company of our brothers, this assembly is indeed a blessing. It's, I think I said in the last show that it's an opportunity for the audience to see some serious talk on the part of some black men.
Amen.
And the same thing should be happening with black women beyond gossip type of stuff where black women have been pigeonholed to be on TV, you know, running stuff, you know. And my reaction to that is that it demeans the beauty and the greatness of black women. In our particular case, I just want to tag on to the Malcolm being violent. We have to examine every label, every adjective that's attached to us by the enemy.
Amen.
And because violent is a term of a person who stands up. Oh, he's violent because you're not going to take no stuff in the police precinct.
That's right.
You're not going to stand for a black man being sodomized, so when you take a stand, Brother Graham, somebody's going to portray you as violent in some report.
Militant.
Militant.
Yeah.
So I just
Aggressive.
wanted to say that. We have to look at these labels ourselves before we adopt them ourselves and then repeat them. Because when we repeat them, we give them strength.
You know,
I like to present, Graham's side of the coin. I mean, he was the first cop I met that I liked. But, then he's all macho man, but he has a spiritual side to him, which is even better. To go through that element and still come out with a spiritual side of him. To survive on it.
You have to enter knowing who you are.
Amen. Okay.
You cannot allow other people to define you or determine what you will be. A lot of young people enter the department, and it's just like the military. You've got to get a mindset into the people to get the objective done. The objective can be met, but you must still maintain your own personal character. You must have your own code of ethics, your own morals, your own standards, which you will not violate, you see. And I had to tell the captain once, you cannot order me to do something that's wrong. Now, if you think you can, pen and paper, and we'll go to court. See, I don't have a problem dealing with you or anybody else. My father died in 1953. That's the one man I was accountable to in this life. Other than my wife and my children, you don't count. But our young people need to have a solid base. Michelle Obama, I saw her on a news clip today, and she was talking somewhere today, and she said, we need to start passing the baton earlier to our young folks.
Yeah.
We need to train them, embolden them, strengthen them, get them on the right path, and pass the baton to them instead of holding on to this position and that position.
Yeah.
And as critical for the sustenance or the maintenance of a family and of a community. So the training has to be done. You're getting it in Morehouse. There's some outstanding professors down there. And when you come out, as you said, you're picking. Martin, Malcolm, two sides of the same coin.
Exactly.
Both men love their people, had different objectives. I took the A train to get up here today. All right, you might have come down on the bus. You might take a cab. We're all looking to get to the same place, So it's wonderful. Malcolm and Martin, a lot of things we missed with regard to both of them. But in time, we've gotten wiser. I even heard Minister Farrakhan say at Gil, I think it was at Gil's passing, or Dr. Clark. He said, Martin was right. He said, I'm an older man now, and I understand what Martin was saying so many years ago.
Wow.
So we need to be somewhat fluid. And they build a skyscraper. The World Trade Center sways about 6 feet or so left and right in the wind, because if it doesn't have that fluidity, it'll snap.
You mean the one that fell down?
Yeah, the plane hit, right, that one. But all buildings move. They move. They don't stay stationary. And there are things that will buffet us, but we should never collapse. There might be a little give, but the foundation is what holds you in place. Not the roof, it's the foundation. So things in life come against you, and they can't come against you forever. That wind and that force will subside, and you're still there.
And I just wanted to add on to that, on the concept of like flexibility. I remember the film Malcolm X, where Malcolm X said, before you were a Democrat or a Republican, before you were a Jew or a Muslim, before you were anything, you were black. Being black is the root. Right. And young people and older people need to learn that we can learn from each other. That gives us flexibility, just like the towers. So I think that if we realize that we have much more in common than we do opposite, I think we can really make a stronger movement than was ever before. President Obama was absolutely right when he said that, I know it sounds pretty, up there, but this generation coming up of young people is really the best generation because we're much more tolerant to other people. We're much more understanding of other people, I feel.
Well, you being a New Yorker, did you find that so when you went south?
I feel like, yes. Actually, I found that in the South.
Tolerance for other people?
Yeah, but what I found out was that from the older generations of Morehouse men towards the LGBTQ community at Morehouse, there wasn't that same level of tolerance that I would have for a student, because they weren't having the respectability of what a Morehouse man should be. His sexuality, what he does in his own room, actually affected his position as a Morehouse man, which was actually pretty scary to actually think about that.
So there is, at this time, the LGBT community in Morehouse.
Yeah, and Spelman and Clark, they don't feel comfortable. They feel as if they're targeted, which is incredible. Because we go to a liberal arts institution, and Dr. King promoted the idea that every man, I mean, just not even Dr. King, but he was actually echoing the sentiments that we actually have as Americans, that we're all created equal, And that should be at our core, but sometimes when we find out that someone's a little bit different than us, then we have this tendency to reject them, not understanding that we could have been that way if there was something else happening in our lives. The empathy is being lost. And I feel like our generation, my generation, is actually coming up and bringing that about. But sometimes you have young people who do slide in the way of the ignorant. That's the alt-right movement with these good-looking guys.
Alt-right.
These good-looking guys who have these cool haircuts spewing Nazi rhetoric. But
you have that where?
Oh, the alt-right movement. What? So you have like these new guys, these new white supremacists come up.
Well, that's Donald Trump.
Exactly. So there's always going to be that slip. But I feel like overall, this generation is becoming stronger. And then the generation after me, my children, they'll be stronger and progress.
Well, you don't have any of that down in Georgia, do you?
No, I don't have any kids yet, thank God.
You're working on it.
Yeah.
Well, you said.
Yeah.
No, but the point being, I thought there was quite less of a diversity in Georgia than there is here, and especially when it comes to color.
So
or
there's
shades, different shading.
There is colorism. I think in the South, because you have a lot of there is colorism. I can't that's a huge thing in the South. Still, which is disappointing. But
because you came from this environment here, you found it.
There's classism, there's colorism, there's always these isms. But I feel like at Morehouse College, what we do a little bit differently is that we have Crown Forum and freshman orientation, in which we're constantly addressing freshman orientation and Crown Forum, where we have leaders and intellectuals like you or you, sir, come into the school and tell us where this is coming from. These feelings, these feelings of aggression or microaggressions towards other people.
Right.
So we know it's an issue because we're being diagnosed with the disease. So we have the ability to now cure it for ourselves.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. That's fabulous. Well, I think we should entertain ourselves with a little our present situation with Trump Donald. Trump, the chump in the White House. Yeah. All right, just play Central Park 5, and you're going to get a little taste of what we know about Donald Trump from '89, and his first exposure to his ignorance, and he didn't want to be black back in those days, and but here's his first really huge transgression against the Central Park 5. So play that piece, and we'll be right back at you.
Better believe that I hate the people. that took this girl and raped her brutally. You better believe it.
The vicious rape and beating of a 30-year-old investment banker, Tricia Miley, who was jogging in Central Park last night. 5 youths are in custody and are being questioned. The youngest is only 13.
Trump put his money where his mouth is by taking out this full-page ad in 4 New York City newspapers. Bring back the death penalty.
When I first saw this ad that Donald Trump made, I knew that this famous person calling for us to die was very serious.
5 teens between the ages of 15 and 17 were charged with numerous rape, sodomy, and assault counts.
In 1989, myself and 4 other individuals were arrested and falsely accused of raping the Central Park jogger in a case that became widely known as the Central Park jogger case. We became known as the Central Park 5. In 2002, we were found to be innocent after the real perpetrator came forward, and that was confirmed by DNA evidence.
All of the defendants gave videotaped statements to police implicating themselves or others, but some of their attorneys charged today that police obtained the confessions by force.
People wanted to see how the justice system would work, and so they were looking at this case as a litmus test to see whether the justice system would actually be just or not. And it became very clear that there was this huge black and white kind of thing. These black and brown individuals had raped a white woman in Central Park. That was the worst thing that anyone could have ever done.
What are you afraid of for our city?
This racism, I'm hoping doesn't break out into another racism thing like back in the 60s.
There are other worse things that are happening in the city. And when it happened to a black, they never do the media's never here.
You know, back in 1989, there was a huge divide when you think about the haves and the have-nots, the tale of two cities of sorts.
Most people know why this man is too famous.
In May of 1989, Donald Trump read an ad that ran in all of the major newspapers. In this ad, he basically was saying, bring back the death penalty. Bring back our police. Common citizens were not given the opportunity to make their own judgments. Common citizens were being manipulated and swayed into believing that we were guilty. The simple premise was that if your name was in the paper, if you look like a criminal because of the color of your skin, well, you have to be guilty. He was the fire starter, I would say. Because when you think about going to jail for a crime that you didn't commit, 1 day in jail is too long. When we won the lawsuit, his stance was that we pulled off the biggest heist in New York City's history. But to see that he has not changed his position of being a hateful person, to see that he has not changed his position of inciting people, to see that he's still the same person and in many ways he's perfected his sense of being that #1 inciter. What would this country look like with Donald Trump as being the president? That's a scary thing. That is a very scary thing. What would the world do in response to that? Man, I can't even imagine.
Is that crazy or what?
Yeah, that's
how does that look now?
Horrible.
I mean, here we're sitting in the face of him about to be impeached, but look at all the people that are backing him up. I mean, we're looking at 62 million ignorant people. How ignorant is America? I mean, those of us that fought to make it right or treat us like you say on a piece of paper, like Martin would say. Give us our fair due. You got an honest man like Obama. He was president. He spent too much time being too fair. He was too fair. Most people thought he should have swayed it more towards black, but he was the American president. Because he was half black, half white, he knew both sides. And he tried to be fair. Yet we put him in the category. I believe you said he's not of our culture. And All right? I remember these comments.
I'm glad you remember it. Because I
and Graham was mad about Libya. We were talking about Libya earlier.
Wow.
And we fought about Hillary. We fought about, you were
Bernie
for
Sanders.
Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders.
And we fought amongst each other.
Yeah.
About who should be the next president. Nobody imagined this fool would make it. Nobody imagined that. Now look where we're sitting.
Except one guy.
Who?
A guy named Alan Lichtman.
Knew that?
He
forecast?
He forecasts. I haven't read his book on that, but he forecasts that Trump would win. And he forecast based on the prior administration, the administration of Obama, what did and did not happen in that time, and some other factors. But I just interject that because the same man that projected Trump winning is now forecasting that he's going to be impeached.
Of course.
And the book is, his book is The Case for Impeachment.
Wow.
And it's worth our reading because there are so many similarities. A continuation of what we just saw with the Central Park Five. He makes a comparison, a small comparison with the president who, the man that took the presidency after Lincoln was killed.
Johnson.
Andrew Johnson.
Right.
And
Who was impeached, that's right.
attempted to be impeached, and he survived it. But the circumstance under which he survived it, he has that in there. It's just a short chapter. But his points about why he would be impeached relates to his telling lies, his using other people, his disregard for laws. I'm just going off the top of my head in terms of what I remember, but it's a very interesting book, The Cause for Impeachment by Alan Lichtman. But any discussion of Trump, for me, should be in terms of what does it mean to black people for him to be in, and if he's impeached. What do we do? What should we be doing now? What should be happening in Harlem now where we have the illiteracy rate among our children going to school is what it is. They're not getting books. They're not getting homework. They're not getting book reports. You mentioned, you know, you're at Morehouse and the type of background you had, you read.
Yeah.
And if a book is placed in front of you, you'll flip through and see if there's something in it that you would be of interest. But we have children now who are, I'm talking about our children, who are going to school, and if you put a book in front of them, someone will go out the room because they don't know how to read, and we're not taking care of business in our homes. Right. We're not taking care of business as moms and dads and grandparents and uncles, because that's the way it is today. We're in a war, but we don't know that we're in a war, and as a result, we're taking casualties, and those casualties can be seen on Lexington Avenue, 125th Street every day.
Exactly.
Getting on a bus. These are powerful men. You have to look at them as an army. Suppose they was army, and they were in good health. I mean, they're not dumb, they just haven't been educated. The foster care system is snatching black children around the country out of their homes. Around the country, it's an intentional thing. It's genocide, soft genocide.
Planned genocide.
Soft genocide, because it's not hitting you right in the face.
One of the things that our folks have slid into, with the talk about child abuse, and we've had cases in New York, egregious cases of children being murdered and such. But everybody jumped on this bandwagon with children's rights and have children believing that if they do something wrong and they get whipped for it, that they should be calling the police. That's like Germany when kids were turning in their parents with the brown shirts. And our people have bought into this. And it's been promulgated through the Department of Education. You know, I had to go to a school many years ago. My godson, he took a beating from his mother. He was stealing money from his mother.
Oh.
And she tore his black
Of course
crack
she did.
up. All right? And she beat him within an inch of his life.
Of course.
Now, he went to school, he was complaining, his arm hurt, this, that, and the other, and the teacher asked him what happened, and she called the authorities, and they came to the house. And fortunately, the man who came said to him, you know, you got a nice place here. If I have to come back here because you stole money from your mother, he said, I'm going to break up what's left. And he was from ACS, and he left. But that's not the result of most cases. I know of a case right now, a young lady told ACS her mother whipped her, and she's no longer with her mother. And mother was charged. See, a parent has the right to correct their child, verbally or physically. And I'm not saying you kill the child, but whipping that can, there's nothing wrong with whipping that can. We've all had our cans whipped, right?
Well,
But what it is that they've got our kids thinking, if they don't like what my mother or father is saying or doing, I'm going to make an allegation. And that's further destroying our families.
Well, I think the weakest point in our system is the lack of discipline. I mean, I only sit here today is because I was disciplined as a kid, you know. You remember our situation. When we came up in the 50s, there was no back talk, you know. I got home from the Marine Corps, and my father put a fifth of scotch on the table and said, let's see what kind of man they made out of you. You know? And I drank the fifth of scotch with him, and I got sassy, and he put me out the house. I could never come back. And that was the last time I would allow him out. My mother even could. But I was 19 and in the Marine Corps. And that was his way of raising me. I mean, he took no stuff, you know? And I respected all that. And as a matter of fact, when my mother died, he took me to the bar and said, well, you know I'm not your father. Then I realized, you know, he had raised me, but I knew now why he didn't like me. But I never took offense to it. I never, you know, I tell a story today just, I said, okay, well, you got me through it. But then I had a half-brother that was a junkie and a boxer. He was a good boxer, but he was hung out on junk. So my father made sure that I didn't come out like that. You know, whether I was his or not, he made sure I didn't come out like that. But see, that kind of discipline we all need. We all need that boot camp, and especially being black and coming up at any time. Julian had the discipline of his two parents. His two parents are immigrants, and they both came to this country and worked hard, and they saw the opportunities here, and they made sure that he understood where he was coming from and what he had to do. And we're proud to see he came to Nan at 16. He was exposed to a safe place to be. How many kids can come to the National Action Network and see the history of our people
in front of them?
Right in front of them. You stand there with a man, no matter what you think of Reverend Sharpton, he's a disciple of Martin Luther King. He's carrying out that creed of nonviolence and sticking up for us. Now, he had a problem with his dad. Oh, man, I mean, to tell his story, his father slept with his half-sister and ran off with him. And Rev was mad at his father for years. But he tells the story in his book. You read the book?
Yeah, Mr. Gilchrist, I think, although my generation is much more, I think, tolerant, but we have lost something. And I always say that I recognize we have certain systemic issues. But we've lost accountability.
Okay.
We've lost the ability to actually say that, you know, as young people, we're wrong. And we didn't learn from our decisions, and sometimes parents don't want to get involved. Or sometimes parents get involved in the wrong way. Or instead of yelling at the kid for getting a bad grade, they yell at the teacher for giving the kid a bad grade. So the kid never takes into account, oh, maybe I should do this better than what I did before. Because we had a lot of hard fighters in the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s. We don't have that now. Because a lot of young people...
Yes, we do, don't we?
Not for young people, I think. I don't think we have the same amount as we did for older folk, because we don't have that same fighting spirit that we did back in the 50s and 60s, because we don't have that same level. We do, but we don't have that same amount or a pressure on us that was placed on you guys. That's where I feel like the strength comes in from your generation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we've got to, again, we've got to brace you up. We have to build that in you and others, whether they're at Morehouse or CCNY or Louisiana State. People cannot survive, and I've been saying for years that the biggest asset to any nation, its greatest resource, is its people.
Right.
And of that, it's children. Maya Angelou did a poem years ago called The Black Family Pledge, and in that poem, she spoke of the black family. And she says, look at the disregard as she holds them up to the world. These people do not even regard their own children. So if you don't take an interest in your child, why should they take an interest in your child?
Exactly.
You know, when I went to school, I knew how to read and write when I went to kindergarten. And I was able to write my name in script. I mean, I was 5, but it was an ugly script, but I could write my name. And my mother made sure that I was reading before, because the responsibility of education is on the parent. It's in the home.
That's
not you send your kid off to babysitter, and you send your kid to daycare, and you send your kid pre-K, and no, your job as a parent, my job as a parent, is to educate my child in the home. How do you conduct yourself at home, and how are you to conduct yourself in public? And that has really been lost. You know, the crack epidemic of the 80s was another factor of tearing apart homes. The notion, the women's lib movement, a lot of our people bought into that. That had nothing to do with black women. All of these things have benefited white women. Even the notion of, they talk about minority vendors and all that. More white women have gained through that program of minorities and women than any other group. And it's white women who have been fronting for their husbands. So we need to go back to the old ways, need to study the old ways. And our women is another critical piece. Single parenting makes no sense. Makes no sense.
It happens all the time.
Needs to stop. Needs to stop. I work with kids, and some of them have parents, a father in the house, and some don't. But you need a balance. You need a father and a mother to raise you.
You and Obama came from single-parent homes.
Right. My father died when I was 4, but I had other men from my church and my community that were in my life on a regular basis. I wasn't out there learning from the guys on the corner. All right? A boy needs a man to guide him. I told my mother when I was 15, I said, Ma, you did a good job, but you can't do anymore. She looked at me like, what? Where I'm going and what I need to know, I can't get from you.
Yeah.
I intend to be a grown man, not a woman or anything less than a man. So the notion, the thinking, the things that I need to survive, I have to get that from other grown men. I can't get that from her. I got the hello, thank you, how are you, let me help you. I got that. But to think and conduct myself as a man, I needed to see that and get that from other men. And in this day and age especially, a lot of women are not educated, and they are victims of this culture and of this system, and their sons are becoming victims. The special ed system, oh, there's something wrong with your child and this and that. That's a lie. I've done 2-hour lectures in special ed schools with high school students. 2-hour lectures, not a sound. Oh, they have attention deficit disorder. They have this, they have that. I'm talking for 2 hours. I did a lecture on Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Nobody got up, nobody moved, nobody went to the bathroom. When I got through, they said, we don't want to go to lunch, we want to know more. There's nothing wrong with these young boys. They're being lied to. There's a system. The mother is paid money by Social Security as a disability. So our own women are pimping. They're pimping our black boys for a check that they don't even know what they've done with it at the end of the week. The teachers are paid at a higher rate of pay at the Board of Ed for special education, so they're pimping our kids.
They get more.
All right? So at the end of it, these boys come out with absolutely nothing.
Destined for the prison.
Nothing, right. On the documentary.
Industrial
Khalif
Browder.
Khalif Browder and
oh, God.
the 13th Amendment, that documentary, it spells it out. So these are the things that we have to look. And what white people do, they have 7-year plans, 15-year plans, and 20-year plans. Things just don't happen. We need to start looking 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, because if you're not looking there, you're not going to make it. When that time comes, remember, do the right thing?
Yeah.
When the brothers were talking about getting a beer, and he says, man, that Korean man got, he took that. God said, man, if you wanted that store, it was sitting there vacant for 5 or 10 years.
Right.
If you wanted that store, you could have got it.
Right.
But me, I'm going over there and get me a cold beer.
Right.
So we have to get that notion out of our head. We're just going to watch as things happen around us, and then, wow, what happened? Education is critical.
Amen.
It is an exercise that has to be exercised. Mental thinking is exhaustive. We are spending too much time doing the physical and the nonsensical, and we're getting nothing out of the plan. And that is their plan, to keep us stupid, to keep us out of the game, keep our young men out of the work arena, keeping them dumbed down so that you're just dependent on Section 8 and food stamps and welfare and all of that stuff, that dependency mode. We've got to break out of that.
All right, I'm going to take us a different route for a minute. You mentioned lies, the lies that were told. I'm going to go a little bit deeper on which most affected me. Most of the crimes that affected me in life was this kid walking into the church and shooting 9 people in church, and come to find out that he believed that every day there was two white women being raped every day by black men. This is what Dylan Roof believed. All right? So, I mean, he was 21 at the time.
Yeah, part of my
So this is the youth, the white youth, and what they've been lied to about. And you play the Dylan Roof and see how he reacted to black people. He's talking to one of his close friends. Play this piece. And
back to the church, you pulled out the gun and you shot him, started shooting people, or how? I mean, how?
Yeah, that's it.
I mean, so, do you know how many people you shot?
If I was gonna guess, maybe. I'm really not sure. Exactly.
Well, did you say anything to him before or after or during?
No, I didn't say anything to him before or anything.
Before? What about after?
Well, I think like during, I said like don't talk to me or something like that. You know.
Just why you're shooting?
Well, then they came to bed. But I didn't really talk to him.
How long were you at the church before you actually before you pulled your weapon out? You said yourself you shot, you think, maybe 5 or so people. How long were you at the church before you decided that you were going to do that?
Well,
I got to 2 programs for NAM.
Say again?
Like, can I say something about some programs?
I'll make an announcement.
Yeah.
We're back on air.
That was the wrong piece. The piece I was showing is that his interrelationship with black people, and the piece that we've seen before was him relating to one of his best friends. He couldn't understand why Dylan did what he did, because he knew Dylan as a completely different person. And they show in this piece how, well, they show in this piece here, this is him doing his confession. And he talks about in this piece, that piece there was 3 hours long, I think. I don't know why, I got it mixed up with another one that I had. But Dylan was an unusual character. But see, this is the kind of racism Donald Trump is producing in our environment. He's already upset all of Europe. Sessions has managed to pull back all the advances that we made in police reform, everything that Obama ever put out there. But he started off with the birther movement, you know, in 2011?
2011. Wait a minute, 7.
Now the whole birther movement was built, and that was a political move. Now Jared said the other day that Trump really didn't believe that, but the dumb Republicans would go for it. This is what Jared told a reporter, and she was on MSNBC reporting this. So Trump is a lie. Everybody in New York knew he was a con. And I think we should all take this as a demonstration of what kind of people we got in America. And we're going to have to work on it. I think we have to be a little bit sympathetic towards their ignorance.
That's like being sympathetic towards a snake that's coiled up to bite you. I understand you're hungry.
You know that story.
And I'm going to sit here. No.
But they'll never change.
Let me say this, that Trump didn't produce Dylan Root.
America.
There are at least two markets. One that existed before Trump that Trump is appealing to, and that group of people who are coming out of the woodwork based on Trump being in office.
Right.
So there's a whole group of people who are already there.
Right.
There's a whole group of people who hated Obama.
Right.
There's a whole group of people who think that Obamacare is a black man's configuration of health care until they found out that it was the Affordable Care Act that they were benefiting from.
Right.
Well,
clear up the fact that it was actually Romney Care. It's a health care system that came out of Romney.
It came out of the pharmaceutical industry because what I understand is they wrote the bill. They benefit the bill. They benefit from the bill. You have to have insurance, and they benefit. But I'm not an expert in it. They benefit, and that's something for someone else to take up. But Dick Gregory points out, he says, look, here's a guy that had to drive 3 hours to get to that church. How did he know the significance of that church? They talk about that church being a pastor and his congregation.
Okay.
He was in the state government.
Senate.
He was a politician who was assassinated.
Right.
That was
exactly.
assassination of a politician in addition to the congregation.
Right.
The congregation was tolerant of this individual coming in, thinking that, oh, here's a white guy come in, he's going to get the Holy Ghost with us.
Yeah.
And he did send us to the Holy Ghost. Okay? So we have to understand that here's a guy that age with that kind of mentality, not crazy, that kind of articulation. He was fed that information, but they were quick to say that he was not a part of a conspiracy.
Yeah. So you
he
think
was not a part of a terrorist group.
You think he was?
Well, look, here's a guy, look, I just pointed out that black children aren't learning in school and white children aren't learning in school. Right. They're not reading, they're not getting books either. Okay. There's the dumbing down of America. There is the creation of a so-called elite and then a group that services the elite. The group that services the elite gets a little bit of education. The elite is trained to run this system or the global, whatever they call it. My point is that this guy didn't get that articulation from out of the blue. He was indoctrinated. Right. He was for what we would say he was radicalized by someone, but and this is where we take their narrative and reinforce their narrative, which is don't make sense. The guy drove quite a distance to get to that church. Why didn't he go to a church near him? Why did he choose that church? Okay, but anyway, the bottom line is that he is demonstrative of a group of people who exist in the U.S. right alongside of us. And we have to be very careful for our children, especially when they go away to school, to so-called white colleges, and they're on campuses and they think everything is fine. Everything is not fine, especially our women. Our girls, we have to protect our girls who are going into what we call the white college and the campuses. We have to protect them, meaning tell them what the deal is. Don't be going to no fraternity house by yourself, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
The last movie that I saw Tyler Perry make was about Halloween or something like that.
Medea's Halloween. Medea's Halloween.
Medea's Halloween. It has a scene in there with the sister, with his daughter, you know, Tyler Perry, you know, the girl that plays his daughter, and she goes to their dorm. And that you don't do that. Right here, you remember the girl that was raped at St. John's?
Yeah.
All right, she was abused, she was raped, she don't know what the hell happened to her, and they just glossed over that. Our people don't even know about it because we don't pass on generation to generation. Let me just say this, Brother Hemming. The reason you don't see, quote, black leaders is because during the 60s and 70s, black leadership or blacks involved in the protest movement were considered news items. What they have done, what the people who control media have done, they know that those were mobilizing incidents where black would come on TV and he would talk about, or she would talk about the injustices going on. That mobilized black people into a group consciousness. We're dealing with black people who do not have a group consciousness. They'll call themselves American before they call themselves black. They'll call themselves diverse before they call themselves black. They are minority. We get along and all. And look, the history shows that we are in danger. The factories are closed. They're talking about robots taking the place of retail jobs. And as you said, Brother Weatherspoon, the Caucasian has these 5, 7, 8, 10, 20-year plans, and we fall into it. We don't know what their plan is for us, but we can see the results.
They're building more prisons.
Yeah, so we have to begin. This is some of the things that come to mind in terms of solutions. One, Brother Witherspoon, one of the reasons why they're single-parent homes is because whether the black man has a job or not, he has got to find some gainful means of employment and be involved with his children. He's got to do that, and the woman has to be cognizant she can't do it alone. That's a line that's been fed to our people, to everyone. And the churches, the mosques, the Masonic lodges, any place that has an organization, that has a base, we have to begin to train or educate our young people into leadership. How to be a husband, how to be a wife. We have to go back to the basics. Okay? Because we have to. We're in a very dire situation, and young people who are our brothers' counterparts, who are just as sharp as he is, but they don't have the training and background. And they're in another...
Go ahead.
Yeah, I really would like to say this. And, you know, going to the point where I think we have the same value, and that is the fact that I want people to be uplifted. But the issue is that there are certain things within our communities that we don't have that cause not to be. And you brought up a solution, and I agree, accountability. So at NAN right now, we're starting a tutoring program, a free tutoring program for young kids so that they can have the opportunities to learn mathematics or to refine their skills in mathematics.
Excellent.
And to refine skills in writing and reading.
Excellent.
Those basics.
That's right.
And then the second thing, at the AUC, Atlanta University Center with Spelman, Clark, and Morehouse, we're starting an AUC chapter, a National Action Network chapter in the AUC, excuse me, where we're getting young people to get organized and to form a coalition to start to combat poverty and combat the miseducation of our people. Because Dylan Roof is just as valuable as Khalif Browder. And the thing about it is that there's just a
You mean the lesson learned from it?
I think there's a miseducation. What would you say one more time, sir?
Yeah, the lesson learned, you said
I think
between the two of them?
No, I was saying that Khalif Browder and Dylan Roof.
Their life.
They're
what they have to offer.
They're both
in terms
as
of
valuable
human beings.
as human beings are both as valuable, but they're just miseducated and they're separated, and that's what happens. So we need to go out there and bring people together. They're saying they have a common humanity, and I think that's our job, especially as human beings, to make sure that we're living in this earth peacefully. You know, because as President Trump said, you know, he's not the president of Philadelphia. He's not the president of Paris. President of Philadelphia. That's wrong. You know, you got to understand that you're a human being, and that we are on this earth together.
Trump isn't human.
Well, oh God, I think he has Machiavellian tactics. I think he doesn't see other human beings as being equal, and when you don't see that as happening, you have that kind of man arising.
Well, Machiavelli was sick too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, there is I keep forgetting, there is a piece from Socrates' Republic, Book 1. Yeah. It talks about a democracy. And it says, Socrates said that democracy is the one government which is best suited to give rise to a tyranny and a tyrant. And I listened to this piece.
Say that again.
Socrates in his Republic, Book 1, said that a democratic government is the best ground to develop tyranny, because in a democracy, people have rights. And the older the democracy, the more rights people have. So there are so many splinter groups and factions that are declaring their own individual rights for whatever reason.
So a third of this country can run the whole country?
No.
With money?
What he says is that as things get fragmented, there is a guy that will come along and say, I'm the one that can fix it. And this is his writings from over 2,500 years ago. And what did Donald Trump say in his campaign? I alone can
make
fix
America great again.
And it was so prophetic. As they're reading Socrates, they're showing these clips of Donald Trump. It's like, oh my God. And they said what happens is people fall in line behind this guy and they march to his beat, and he becomes tyrannical in his leadership. This is why he has to be taken down. They now see the tyranny on the horizon with this man. So many things that he has declared. Remember, he said, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and nobody would say anything.
He's a demagogue.
He said, you know, get them out of here. You know, you need to kick their so-and-so, you know, get them out of here. The violence that he promulgated, all of this, and remember, the fish stinketh from the head. It's a trickle down from the White House, as Jesse would say, to the outhouse. So, yes, they railed against Barack Obama. They conspired in treason to go against the President of the United States the day he was inaugurated.
That was racist.
That was a treasonous act. But look where we are now, because as much as Barack Obama had to fight against these rednecks and racists, he got a lot done.
Yeah.
Trump hasn't passed anything he's only written executive orders.
That's it.
He hasn't passed one piece of legislation. The House bill on affordable health care is just a House bill. It's not going through the Senate.
That's right.
So he hasn't done, with all of the white people that he had behind him, he's gotten nothing accomplished. Whereas Barack Obama got legislation
moved. And he's disappointed them. Coal is not coming back.
You're right.
I mean,
that's right. That's gone.
And they'll find out that they've been
hoodwinked and bamboozled.
Like a lot of 62 million people bamboozled.
You cannot have the masses. We live under this notion, majority rule. That's insane. When you have a sick majority, you have a sick country. When you have the majority of the people thinking and following a man like that, your country is in a bad state of affairs. Majority rule is not what we need.
Well, hopefully Comey comes out and becomes our savior tomorrow.
But there was an issue.
You have some announcements to make?
Oh, yeah. No, those are the NAN AUC chapter and the tutoring program that we're starting.
Oh, okay.
But I want to say with majority rules, majority voted for Hillary Clinton. They didn't
That's
vote.
right.
They didn't
That's
vote for
right.
Donald
That's
Trump.
right.
And so I really want us to understand that our
3
government.
million difference.
It seems as though our government, our democracy, isn't really a democracy at all.
You have never been in a democracy. This is a republic.
And to the republic for which it stands. One nation.
And
this is not a democracy.
It seems more like an oligarchy, too.
It's moving towards that.
Yeah.
It's moving towards
the reflection of the reality is becoming more apparent to us as to who's running. Today, they refer to it as the deep state, the invisible government. These are things that have already and always been in place.
Well, how about Illuminati? The secret society.
Whatever name you put on it.
The 1%ers on steroids.
We look at the results.
Look at Putin, the richest man on the planet.
That's what they say.
Well, he steals enough money. He's enough to give.
What about Rothschild?
Oh, well,
what about their family? Right. And I'm not saying that in defense of, we're picking up from them what they're saying about one of their own in order to demonize Trump as being treasonous to the United States. And that whole game comes from the Hillary Clinton, according to what they say, comes from the Hillary Clinton position of that she had when she was running against him for the presidency. And that piece is still in place. All of a sudden, the Russians are the enemies when they weren't before that. But I'm not defending them. I'm just going.
Putin hated Hillary. Obviously.
That's in the big house.
Read the U.S. Code. Look up the U.S. Code, treason. Not in Webster's dictionary. Read the U.S. Code for treason. It is aiding and giving aid to the adversary.
That's it.
That is treason.
Trump, you're going down. You're going down, boy.
May I make an announcement? This somewhat relates to Morehouse. One of your graduates of Morehouse, Dr. Wesley Muhammad, is coming to New York.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to be here June 17th and 18th. He's going to be at Mosque number 7 on 127th Street, Malcolm X Boulevard, and he's talking about the attack on the black male on Saturday, and he's talking about the attack on the black father on Sunday, which is Father's Day. So that's Malcolm X Boulevard, 127th Street.
Thank you for coming. The God in me loves the God in you. And stay tuned, more of the Gilchrist Experience. We're here to bring the man down. God bless. Power to the people.
Yeah.